to sit in the front row.
There's that too.
I feel imperious, actually.
All right. I think we maybe want to get started. Yeah, just so everyone knows, Sarah is on her way. She ran into some traffic and she'll probably be arriving at a certain point during this reading. So just be ready for that to happen. We are excited for her to get here, and it probably will be pretty soon. Thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this for several months, and I'm really excited to share this evening of poetry with you. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we gather here on the traditional lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present. Let's take a moment tonight to honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe, a people who are still here continuing to bring their heritage to light. Acknowledging that we are on native land is just a start. So if you are able, consider donating directly to realrentduwamish.org to help support Duwamish outreach and cultural life. I'd also like to take this moment to let folks know to go ahead and silence your cell phones. Otherwise, they will ring. You know how when you don't do it, that's the one time it rings? You gotta be ready. All right, without further ado, Kathryn Rantala is the author of A Little Family and other titles, including The Finnish Orchestra and 3 Letters and Julius. She's also a visual artist whose 3-dimensional stills will be shown February through March 2024 at the Francis Anderson Center in Edmonds. A longtime Edmonds resident, she is the founder and editor of Ravenna Press. John Burgess grew up in upstate New York, worked on a survey crew in Montana, taught English in Japan, and now writes and draws in Seattle. His influences include 70s punk, Montana bars, and haiku. He has 6 books of poetry from Ravenna Press, each with an increasing number of maps, graphs, and comics interwoven. His latest collection is Punk Poems Complete, which collects all 100 of his 10-line punk poems, and you can find more at punkpoet.net. Sarah A. Chavez, who will be arriving shortly, is a mestiza born and raised in the California Central Valley. She's the author of the poetry collections Hands That Break and Scar from Sundress Publications, All Day Talking from Dancing Girl Press, and Like Everything Else We Loved from Pork Belly Press. Chavez teaches creative writing and Latinx and Chicanx-focused courses at the University of Washington-Tacoma and serves as the poetry coordinator for the Best of the Net anthology. Her recent work can be found in Painted Bride Quarterly, Diode, and Hotel America. Her new chapbook, Half-Breed Helene Navigates the Whole, appeared in number 21 of Ravenna Press's Triple Series. I hope you all enjoy this evening of poetry, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our authors.
Well, thank you for coming. It's terrible weather for driving, but you made it, and Sarah will make it soon, I hope. I'm Kathryn Rantala. I'm going to be reading tonight from A Little Family, my book from Spite and Dival Press. Spite and Dival is a neighborhood in New York, and it means spit at the devil, which I think is a great motto for any small press and any independent bookstore, and probably for me too. I'd like to say something about the cover. A Little Family ironically has one person, but she also has the dog. And she has this object, a carved face in the keystone, and she has the architecture, and she has the frame, and she has a dark brown background. All of these things are equal of importance inside the book. In keeping with the weather, I'd like to start with something somber. It's called Polly, Pretty Polly. The title is a nod to Old English folk songs. It's about loss and empathy. He wrote a song for the forest, not of, but for. A song of gratitude, of manly affection and understanding. He presented it with pride and apprehension. Should it not please, the mood be off, or the song too simple, or in case the forest would fail to see him at all, standing there, who he was, singing. He had to make his gift aloud. Paper would not do, nor bark, charcoal, or the pointed feathers fallen at wood's edge. He sang as if his lungs were outside of himself, as if feelings could fly out in a lasso of breath. It's the same always. The lost sing their love to the labyrinth, and the wild swans of complication tie clouds to the notes, draping them on everything. And the water in the heart of the air rains where it will, equally on bush and fungus, on one bringing gifts. Today it is a soft rain, a glistening rain, a cooling comfort handed down by the leaves, an embrambling that may, though sweet, drown who would be comforted. Sensing the last of his breath, the great trees bent toward the surface of his eyes to read what the soul would leave there. As they straightened, they sang quietly, Polly, pretty Polly, remembering loss within their depths. Then they turned away to face where they were thickest and darkest, their movement causing a wind that made the smaller of them hum. Slightly lighter one. This is called The Waving Woman. East of the pier in a small neighborhood, a woman at the end of the street is waving to the postman who has just left mail at her porch. Or she's waving to the garbage man who emptied the cans, or the gardener who tidied the neighbor's yard, or the musical woman a few doors down and her student who have just finished their lesson. She makes this gesture so often, so ecumenically, it is difficult to tell for whom it is meant. None can remember her hands hanging still at her sides. She has waved, they say, to a bird, a cat, to trees in the daylight, to one or another star in the night. Whoever notices her believes she is waving solely to them. For that moment, they feel at home in the world and do not consider at all the disturbance she's causing the air, the churn, the displacement as her hand cuts left then right. So much in life goes uncared for. When the earthquake strikes Japan, mountains of water bearing citizens, cars, trees, street signs, buses, boats, and small buildings roll out into the sea, carrying everything forward like gifts. When the tsunami reaches California, it floods into the bay. As it approaches the little neighborhood east of the pier, it notices something and hurries to meet it, the waving flag of dry land. Sarah has arrived. Yay. Now I can make the joke I was going to make at the beginning, which is that we're reading in age descending order. It wouldn't have been funny without Sarah. This is called Art Deco, and it has a lot of angles in it. Excuse me. A man stands on the veranda. The veranda is grand and white and beautiful, and people at the party inside call it a pavilion, though it is not. They look out to the beautiful veranda and see a man looking out from a pavilion. They believe they are thinking of the view and not of the sea. The veranda has vertical pieces where a hand might rest and a peak of beams and glass. Below is lattice, everything complicating itself up and down. Through the outlook is the night, divided into sky and sea. The night sky and sea at night are so beautiful that verandas overlooking them may be pavilions. All the colors in the sky and the sea are blue, lapis, peacock, marine, and blue so blue as to be black. The party guests hold glasses shaped like diamonds. They look up as a man arrives, and some of them say, "Oh, or there you are." One says, "I'm mixing another batch." The man sits down beside a woman with a sharp chin. He says, "May I?" She crosses her legs and leans and says, "Possibly." And someone else laughs. The laughter is as sharp as her chin, as the points her knees make, as the angles of their glasses, the tip of the pavilion, the fumes of the gin in a new batch. The man flourishes his handkerchief. "A Houdini," someone says. He dabs at the corners of his eyes. The woman watches him and thinks, "Such beautiful eyes," then looks away toward the wall of glass in the veranda. She rises, crosses the room, and goes outside. A man stands on the veranda. He feels it is a pavilion, but it is not, though it is beautiful. People inside see a man looking out from a pavilion. They believe they are thinking of the view. The woman steps out and joins him. His cigarette responds to a breeze. His fingers hook lattice. She leans against him, light as a sheet. All the colors in the sky and the sea are blue. This is from one part of a section called Im Zoologischen Garten. Just means at the zoo. But if you say it in a foreign language, it sounds so mysterious. And mystery is partly what this book depends upon. The title is Concessions. A ticket to the zoological garden does not include a ticket to the botanical garden. It is non compris. The concession stand is at the margin of the garden. It is before the low gate where you must pay to go farther. Beyond the concession stand, over the head of the man with your spun sugar, your glazed apple, over the umbrella above his head, you see the structure containing the botanical exhibit. Its panes of glass flash as the sun moves across them, like the lens of a man's eyeglasses, which, when they are turned toward you, give a momentary light. Before, you've only seen pictures of it. Pictures of soaring glass with surprising angles that veer away like birds. Lush courtyards and huge doors and uncountable pieces of wood holding it all together. Wood cut into all possible sizes to hold together the uncountable glass squares that make up the walls and ceiling and even the doors of the botanical garden. Wood like the stalks and trunks that grow in great numbers inside. It is all of a piece, house of glass and a house of wood. What a sad, empty sound it would be if a rock broke one of the panes of glass. What a great and beautiful sound it would be if a fire burned the botanical garden altogether, burned and weakened the wood until it could no longer support the uncountable glass panes, so they all fell at once, but in their own ways, some of them cracking, some of them crashing and splintering, some of them tinkling softly to the ground like spun sugar. What a beautiful sound that would be. Two short pieces to end with. One is called Clyde. He faces the water from a ledge. The ocean boils and roars in its surge to the shore. The way he rocks on his heels when buffed by the wind shows him he is empty. He came all the way to the coast from the Dust Bowl, where there is but one history for everyone, silt. As soon as they stand upright, they are covered with it, filled, marked at surface and depth by it, and also by rust, longing, and the indelible stains of crime. He must lean into the gale in order to keep his feet. Needles of seawater stab his face. A shock of air hits his fedora hard and pushes at his vest. He steps forward as onto a running board. The wind tears through him like a .38. And my last. This is for anybody among you old enough to have watched Jimmy Durante on television. At the end of the program, when children already have gone to their rooms and stored the day under the bed from where it will ooze like oil into their dreams, Jimmy Durante turns to gaze at the audience and begins his upstage walk. He balances an occasional over-the-shoulder look with his casual striding away. He lifts his hat and sings goodnight to us, goodnight to vaudeville, goodnight, 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 and steps through a series of circular spotlights on the floor. Jimmy and his shoes of eclipse. Between houses at the curbside, passed by but few cars, a cat, this part black, this part white, surveys his situation, then makes his way up the drive. Thank you. I should introduce John Burgess, I'm sorry.
You too, punk, will age. Too soon blemishes, which neon conceals, will glare at noon. Like stares a man in heels gets, just try to hide desires dragged out midday. You too will suit up, dress for day jobs, grow way too fat, too entrenched, too taxed, way too satisfied, fit to be tied. Hey, thanks. Thanks to the U Bookstore for having us. Thanks to Ravenna Press for, the honor of collecting all 100 punk poems. Ravenna published the first punk poems in 2005. So it's been about 25 years of writing to get to 100. And a shout out to the Vigilante Food Book Club in the back row. Yay. There's I'd like to touch on 4 influences on punk poems tonight. The years that the family and I lived in Japan, so Japan and haiku influence. Montana bars, yes. Beat poetry, and they kind of ended up in the book as obits. So I called that section the dead beats. And then 70s punk music. So we'll start with Japan. 17 views of Mount Fuji. For everybody on the bus when we circumnavigated Mount Fuji in August of 1988. Also inspired by Hokusai, whose current exhibit is at Seattle Art Museum, is 100 views of Mount Fuji. These are just 3 from 17 views of Mount Fuji. Look, you can't be a Buddha by reading a book. You can't know Mount Fuji from ukiyo-e prints or travel brochures. It's not as you imagine. It's not snow-capped. It's not pine-framed. It's not meditative. But it's sudden, ashen, and low. A kabuki actor without makeup. Not obvious despite all the views. You won't know it at first. Only a break in the clouds. In ukiyo-e prints, people, if depicted at all, are almost always insignificant to landscape. Painted in a corner, doing mundane things. When you first see Mount Fuji from the road, you won't remember who's driving or where you're going. Didn't climb Mount Fuji. Sometimes it's better to imagine you did. Desire lasts longer than pictures and postcards. Keeps things you want the most exactly the way you want them. Montana bars, specifically the Crystal Bar in Bozeman, Montana, big influence on me and my poetry. So here's a couple imperfect sonnets that are true stories. Could I love her more if she wore dark glasses and a scarf like Jackie O? If she chain smoked, spit and swore, shot back whiskey, bucked like a bronco. If she spoke at disappointment, lived a landscape of bare light bulbs and ashtrays, broke hearts, sang of redemption, desire, escape. If she made me wear a dog collar, sit up and wait for her at the kitchen table. If she called me daddy when she came in late, as if we were both longing to find out just what Hank Williams was talking about. Patsy Cline's singing on the jukebox Sunday night. How love lingers like smoke from cigarettes left burning in ashtrays or ice cubes at the bottom of a whiskey coke. How love sticks around like red lipstick on a shirt or a shot glass. And you're missing love even more than Saturday night when you left him lying split-lipped, flat out on the barroom floor, face down in peanut shells and spilt beer, curled up, bloodied like a newborn steer. Ooh, true stories. Hard to believe, huh? Here's some obits for some deadbeats. Or dead beats. I don't know where the emphasis should be. Philip Whalen, 1923 to 2002. I'd like to be laid on a bed of frozen raspberries, you said, a few days before you were dead. Like some kind of crazy koan that would unravel the mind thoughts of those left behind, pull the last loose thread of the wool from over our eyes. Let us see the absurdity of how seriously we take the dying. William Burroughs, 1914, 1997. What a cut up and that crack in your voice. Matter of fact, manual typewriter, clack, clack, clack. Live long and low. Folks make folk heroes out of outriders. Lawrence Ferlinghetti, 1919 to 2021. Yeah, he lived to be 101. Pretty amazing. To stand 100 plus 1 years, to not yield, to advocate and build, to double down, to occupy war-weary town, to front revolution after revolution after revolution, to spin the karma wheel, to fly off like a crow across a sumi-washed sky. Diane DePrima, 1934-2020. May I call you goddess, ye who enters me, fornicates my mind, absolves all thoughts. May I call you wolf, ye who devours me, leaves this carcass exposed and castrated. May I tend your garden, may I mend your hem. Michael McClure, 1932 to 2020. Leave blank what's blank. Find your center. Let edges be edges. Take what starts as an idea, as ink to brush, and give it breath. With one stroke, birth to death. And Joanne Kiger, 1934 to 2017. I know what you're saying, that I have to see what's right in front of me and not set sights on distant desires. I must get by with my own eyes. From time to time, spot in the alley, coyote passing by. And the last influence, 1970s punk music. Starts with one for the Ramones, Fun Poem 14. I thought it was, I actually edited this one. I didn't change very many poems between editions, but this one I had late 1978. But because of Google now, you can look up all the concert dates, right? And it was actually in the spring of 1978. They played in Rochester, April of 78 at the Penny Arcade. And this is what I was remembering. But Google helps with memory. For the Ramones. I saw you, Lake Ontario Club, 1978. I was the one pogoing in back, spilling as much beer as I was drinking, Genesee cream ale and green cans. You, in ripped t-shirt, torn knee jeans with guitar, on stage. I'd like to see you again. If you feel the same, call me. Punk Bone 75. I stick my head through the jukebox and think about anarchists in black. As if Johnny wasn't my real name, as peacocks scream and scream, I can tell by the junk in their throats, all the tear gas and all the meaning. I'll rip my shirt and wave my flag, but when this song is finished, I'm gonna leave this bar, my angel wings sprouting early. For Patti Smith, Punk Poem 79. Lean close, speak softly into her ear. Offer gifts to her, talisman in button silk, creased Polaroids with scalloped edges. At her gate, leave drums. Punk Poem 92. It was your guitar that first bit me, before eating my ears, before I felt your tongue lick my mind, that chewed 10 times before I was swallowed. Punk Poem 95. Burn, America, burn. Dry up and burn. Burn with outrage and hatred, burn. These streets burn. These houses, these woods. Burn every damn thing. Burn desire. Burn even this. Punk Poem 99. Like Johnny Thunders, I'm aware enough to wear a dress. Dance for you, drunken and drugged, but never a drag. You know the rest. Talented, misunderstood. I won't be canonized until I'm dead. Punk Poem 100. Whoever took my Blondie LPs, please return them. No questions asked. I forgive you. Next up, Sarah.
Hello. I want to say thank you so much to Kathryn for having me, and to Ravenna Press for publishing my chapbook. It's very close to my heart, and I'm happy to be here to share it with you all. And I just want to apologize again for how late I was. I don't know if you all saw how bad it was raining.
We were all late.
Oh, good. I mean, yeah. Culturally, I just don't like being the only person late, so I'm like. But thank you so much for having me tonight, and thank you, Milo, for this reading. What a lovely space. This is actually my first time in the new bookstore, even though I teach at UW. So very excited to be here. I'm going to read 3 poems from the chapbook, and then I'm gonna read one from. It's in the same series, but I've been talking to my students about pop culture and the way that we can integrate pop culture into our work. And so it's been on my mind, and that's one of the things about the way that this chapbook engages with identity. And so, but the two that are in here are both super long, and I was like, nobody wants to sit through that. So I found a shorter one. So I'm gonna find a shorter one. But so this collection is called Half-Breed Helene Navigates the Whole. And her halfness will become evident in the first novel. Half-breed Helene ponders her name in the numerology section at Barnes & Noble. Epigraph, Helene, French spelling, Greek, meaning bright, torch, light, pronounced with an een or an ain or an in sound at the end. Helene doesn't feel as current as the more forthright Helen or the airier Helena. Helene, origin and meaning, the name book. No, not Helen, classic, simple. Not Helena, culturally specific, the name of sexy Latin actresses with dark lips and generous hips. Helene, hell, where no one wants to go. And lean, what her abuela says to never do because it makes you lazy and ruins your posture. I am not a lazy demon, Helene thinks indignantly, so loudly it made her lips move. And a name without nicknames, too. No abbreviations for reprieve from the moldy 6-letter tyranny. She envies her friends who get cute intimacies to denote familiarity. Letty for Leticia, Angie for Angelica. She asked her mom once for a nickname or even a pet name. What about Lene, she said. Or Lenny? Her mother crooked an eyebrow. Hell, H had said, even hell would be fine. Helene sounds so formal, so adult. The name of a quote-unquote old soul, an obnoxious phrase said up to and about her by men her father's age, asking her out while she clears their table or steams milk for a latte. Ugh. And in Starbucks, the pronunciations are atrocious. Those are the times, she says, I'm sorry, children, fuck it, and tries on names like Sally, Maria, or Erica, so delightfully straightforward. Her favorites, though, are the ambiguous, androgynous names like Sam, Sky, or Lupe. Better to be unknown than falsely labeled or misunderstood. The reality, of course, is that H is a half Mexican, half Midwest white Californian with a French spelling of a Greek name. Like all things in her life, this nomenclature lacks clarity and singularity. It is, modestly put, a goddamn mess. There's a little bit of language.
No problem.
Okay, cool.
Very important part of it.
Right? I mean, they say that like people who swear have higher IQs. So I'm just going with it. That sounds good to me. That's what I tell my mom now. She's like, the language out of you. It's the same. These are persona poems from Helene. I mentioned a little bit about pop culture, and one of the things that I've been sort of working with in terms of identities, you know, we place ourselves not just where we place ourselves, but also where others place us, and also what we get to see, like what we have access to. So in terms of identity, it's not just ethnicity or gender or socioeconomics, it's also pop culture and like what are we watching and what are we allowed to like feel connection to. So this poem's called Half-Breed Helene Has a Crush on Captain America. Chris Evans is a tasty beefcake. Robert says, swaying his hips in the Helenes as he twirls past with a tray of local craft pints for table 7. Hottie with a body, Teresa laughs, winking H's way. Helene blushes a little. perched on the end of a high stool rolling silverware. Teresa only knows half of H's heart, only that she has watched half all the Marvel movies, shyly focusing special attention on Captain America. H had never been into white boys or military types and didn't bother to look up the actor's name. As far as she was concerned, knowing anything outside the film was to shatter the shell of universe in which this skeptic patriot, skinny boy soul in the body of physical competence, sensitive warrior existed. A person neither of this time nor the time from which he came, Cap was half in the world and half of the ocean, roiling desire in his eyes, desperate to serve, to obey some exigent right, some capital T truth, to be living proof of what was great about the greatest generation's sacrificial narrative. All this gnawing in his chest, propelling him halfway around the world to enact tasks he didn't understand. Out the corner of her eye, Helene could see Robert down the aisle of the window-lined dining area, one hand cupped under the lip of the low counter, arms stretched to length, other hand on the Formica foretop bolted to the floor, mimicking the scene in each movie in which he appears when Captain America must grip two disparate objects, one stable, grounded, the other falling away. Off a track, the top of a building, a city floating to escape. Robert flexes his doughy muscles, mock strain contorting the edges of his mouth. It is clear to H that Robert has never felt split, never held white knuckle tight to two conflicting things, blind, furious for them to come together to be whole. Those muscles, Teresa says, following a low whistle. H chuckles, pretending to be in on the joke, but the truth she doesn't speak is that during those scenes she is singularly focused on Cap's face, the pain in the creased crow's feet, the earnestness, the kind of open desire hard won in the face of so much loss. A determination to never again allow one's world to disconnect, the two sides of your spirit to even lose this tenuous axis. It's that naked sincerity that makes H lean forward on the floor in front of the television, makes her clutch tighter the thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders, makes her close her eyes and long to sink back into the certainty that one should continue to move forward. In her heart, she wonders if maybe, existentially lost together, she and Captain America, halfway between right and wrong, between there and nowhere, would find balance. Half-breed Helene's mother says not to call herself that. What? Helene asks, perched on the edge of her mother's bed, flipping the glossy pages of celebrity rags and J. Crew catalogs. You know, she says, waving her hand like an off-kite horse, the white of her delicate fingers glowing against the California sun, filtering through the crystal prisms, dangling from the window pane, making their three-colored rainbows. The bright distinction between the hues while maintaining a unity in size and intensity was always what Helene admired most about them, rainbows. Half-breed? You're the one who said it first, H says, not to be disrespectful, not to be contrary, though she knows that is what everyone thinks, as if her body's inability to pick one, to have a solid side, has made the intonation of her voice equally straddling. And she supposes this is true, a genuine curse to be able to see two perspectives simultaneously, to empathize with the right hand and the left, the east and the west. This is not to say that she agrees, of course, the other mistake made by those whose bodies obey a singularity of cultural experience. Rather, the vantage from this borderland, the third space floating outside of belonging, is like standing on the impermeable cement and steel of a skyscraper. It's just visible, whether you want to see it or not. Remember, Helene starts to explain that time in second grade when she came home from school after darker-skinned Mexican girls told her she wasn't a real Mexican. And her mother, in the wisdom of new single motherhood, told her that she was just a half-breed and there was nothing wrong with that. Until now, I guess, age thinks, as her white mother holds up a hand, soft, to arrest Helene's voice, stop its movement through the dusky air between them. The skin not only glowing, but silk smooth, a softness H has never grown around her own skeleton, and would, in fact, worry about tearing if she did. Those are the hands of salt baths and office work, not chlorine and pruning shears, not industrial soap and scrub brushes. That is a terrible thing to say. Her mother motions her fingers like the feathers of a fan, graceful swipe at the air, brushing away this fact that does not suit her. And then this will be my last poem. Again, thank you all so much for being here and having me. This is another sort of pop culture influence poem. The other poem I wanted to read in this talks about Josh Brolin, and so I was like, ooh, symmetry. Let's talk about Josh Brolin's wife. And then I was like, oh god, that's so long. Just kidding. So if you want to read the other poem that mentions Josh Brolin, you should. Half-breed Helene's taste in people is weird. At least that is what Teresa says. Chica, you so weird. And Helene supposes this must be accurate if Teresa, beautiful, calm, decidedly well-adjusted Teresa, thinks so. It's not even really taste in people, but tumbling face-first infatuation with movie and TV characters. Screw the actor. H doesn't want to know they're just like a real person, which isn't true anyway. The reality most likely is they're drinking wine by a pool in Beverly Hills with their designer dog. That information ruins everything. Because then H must consider that they're rich or business savvy or like one of the well-off handsy business owners that talks condescendingly sweet to her at the restaurant. She only puts up with overly friendly hands for tips. Otherwise, fuck them. Example. Helene does not moon over Josh Brolin, but she has become entranced by young Josh Brolin as Wild Bill James Butler Hickok in the late 80s, early 90s television series, The Young Writers. Jimmy, that's what his friends call him, is sweet and sad and wants to be a good person, but has the terrible gift of being the fastest gun in these here parts, which according to the show is most parts. The long sandy hair flowing from beneath his Stetson looks soft, like a Pantene commercial. The hands he brushes the horses with are nub-nailed and calloused. H can't help but dream a little about the tension of textures on this one body, the fine silk of hair, the wood bark of palms. She imagines them reading to each other while leaning against a dusty fence post, him practicing his reading because he was too poor to finish school, and her gently correcting his pronunciation. His teeth are straighter than anyone's would have been in that time, straighter than most of the people she knows who even had a retainer. But she doesn't hold that bit of inconvenient perfection against James Butler Hickok. They will drink sarsaparilla and share hunks of bread and sinking dust. However, Brolin in Goonies as the hunky, muscular older brother, no thank you. Brolin as the rich kid in the episode of 21 Jump Street, most certainly not. He raped someone and snitched on his friends for immunity, a true garbage human. That sandy hair was cut short and those straight teeth menaced beneath a vomit-inducing smirk. And speaking of 21 Jump Street, young Johnny Depp, pre-insanity and domestic violence and alcoholism, no thank you. Hanson, no thank you. No thank you, Gilbert Grape. No thank you, Don Juan. But Benny and June. Edward Scissorhands, crybaby. The greasiness of his hair only shows how unconcerned he is with appearance. Except in Crybaby, because that's the look. Oh, and Ratchet Face, sweet Ratchet Face. She holds a special place in Helene's heart. Johnny's mid-career characters are too busy being quirky and awkward, arty and mooning, obsessed with someone else who is sad and misaligned with the world. H realizes that other than Teresa, all her crushes are sad. When she's being honest, she can say that she's sad. And when these soft-lined, masculine-presenting characters are sad and they love sad people, and that maybe two sad people make a strange kind of math, sad plus sad equals happy, that means there's hope for her. Helene doesn't dream to not be sad. She can't even imagine her body in such a state. Her sadness has become weighted presence in her chest, anchoring her to the world. If it were to lift, she'd likely float, lost like a balloon, unbridled, unbidden, untethered into the sky, which would take her out of what feels to be so important. What's there to do so high up? No mopping and watering plants, no serving food, no going to school. H has learned that she can do all the normalities of living while sad, sad, sad. It would just be a little bit lovely to be sad with someone else who will also hold their sadness stoically until evening, when they are both home from tending horses or trimming hedges, and can lie in the dark, moonbeams slicing through window panes, holding one another, lost in the electric exchange of melancholy that flows from each of their fingertips as they outline one another's full and trembling lips. Thank you.
Should we just wrap or have any questions or what?
If anyone has questions, you can feel free to ask.
Anyone buying drinks? No? I guess that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.